The hours after that brunch felt like walking through a fog of humiliation. When I got home, the house, my home, didn't feel like mine anymore. The air was different, heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves were whispering doubts about me. Dad's office door was shut tight. I could hear faint shuffling inside, the click of his pen, the occasional sigh. I stood outside for a long time, hoping he'd call me in, ask me to explain, let me defend myself. But he never did. When he finally came out for dinner, he didn't even look at me. He spoke to Mom in clipped sentences as if I wasn't sitting 3 feet away. "Call the bank in the morning," he said. "We'll need documentation." Then to no one in particular he added, "I just can't believe this." I wanted to scream, to tell him again that I didn't take anything, but the way he kept his gaze fixed on his plate, so calm, so cold, made the words die in my throat. Mom didn't help. She kept moving between us like a nervous ghost, setting down dishes, refilling glasses that didn't need refilling. When I finally looked at her, hoping for reassurance, she dropped her eyes. "Your father's upset," she whispered. "Let him cool down, cool down." He thought I'd stolen $200,000. How was I supposed to cool down? Claire, of course, was the picture of quiet concern. She showed up later that evening, dressed in soft beige like she was attending a peace summit. "Hey," she said gently, stepping into my room. "Are you okay?" I laughed bitterly. "Do I look okay?" She sighed, sitting on the edge of my bed. "Dad's just stressed. You know how he gets." I told him it must be a misunderstanding. Her tone was soothing, practiced. "Maybe the bank made an error or something." "Claire," I said, my voice trembling, "you were the one managing everything. Didn't you see anything unusual?" Her brows knit together. "No, not that I remember. But I'll double-check. I'll help clear your name, I promise." It was the perfect act. Compassionate sister, trying to mediate between angry father and confused daughter. If I hadn't seen the flicker of something smug, in her eyes as she patted my hand, I might have believed her. Later that night, Dad didn't say goodnight. He just walked past my room, the sound of his footsteps heavy, final. That silence was worse than any shouting could have been. By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I went downstairs to get water, hoping maybe Mom was still awake. The kitchen was dark except for the faint glow of the refrigerator light. She was there, sitting at the table with her hands folded. "Mom," I whispered. She looked up, startled. "You should get some rest." "Do you believe me?" I asked. She hesitated just long enough to shatter me. "I don't know what to believe, Lily," she said softly. "But your father's heart can't take more stress. Just don't make it worse." That was it. Not comfort, not faith. Just another layer of quiet judgment. I went back upstairs, gripping the banister so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I reached my room, the anger hit me full force, burning, shaking, uncontainable. I wanted to tear something apart, to scream until the whole house heard me, but I didn't. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the shadows on the wall, replaying every moment of that morning in my head. The printout, the signature, Claire's pale face. How could no one see what was happening? How could I be accused so easily while the real culprit sat smiling among them? Somewhere between the fury and the heartbreak, a strange calm settled over me. It wasn't peace, it was purpose. If no one was going to fight for me, I'd have to do it myself. I wiped my face, grabbed my notebook, and wrote one line in the middle of a blank page. Find out what really happened. That night, I stopped being the helpless daughter. I became the detective of my own downfall. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and eyes swollen from crying, but something inside me had hardened overnight. I couldn't live another day drowning in guilt that wasn't mine. If Dad thought I'd taken that money, I was going to prove otherwise. Not with pleas, but with proof. I opened my laptop and pulled up the family's shared finance folder. Every spreadsheet, every scanned receipt, every email that once seemed so boring now felt like a trail of hidden secrets. The folders Claire had created were neatly labeled: Dad's medical, property taxes, transfers. I clicked on transfers. At first glance, everything looked normal. Routine transfers, utility bills, medical payments. But then I noticed a line item buried halfway down a statement. Authorization, $200,000. Wire personal account. The date was exactly 2 weeks before Dad's last hospital visit. My stomach dropped. That wasn't right. I had never approved a transfer like that. I clicked the attached authorization form, and there it was. My name, my digital signature, and my account details. Only the signature didn't look quite right. It was almost perfect, but the last loop in my name was slightly off, tighter, more angular. It looked copied. I scrolled down to the email chain and froze. The authorization had been confirmed via my email, except it came from an alternate address, 1 letter off from mine. Someone had made a fake account. A chill crawled up my spine. Claire had insisted on managing the paperwork when Dad was hospitalized. She'd asked for my email password just to make things easier. I'd trusted her. My own stupidity burned hotter than any anger. I kept digging. Receipts, timestamps, authorization logs, small details that didn't add up. Some emails were marked read at 3 a.m. I hadn't been awake then. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just an accident. It was deliberate. At that moment, my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number. Hello? My voice came out shaky. Ms. Parker? This is Mr. Haynes, your father's attorney, the man said. His tone was clipped, professional. I wanted to confirm. We received your signed consent for the fund transfer last quarter, correct? I froze. Consent? Yes. The wire from your personal savings to your father's recovery fund. I just need to clarify if you authorized that personally, or if it was handled by your sister on your behalf. The room tilted. I had to grip the desk to stay steady. I didn't authorize any transfer, I stammered. I didn't even know it happened. There was a pause. That's concerning, he said carefully, because we have your signed approval on file. It matched your ID and signature. I'll need to send it over for verification. My throat went dry. Please do. When the email came through minutes later, I opened the PDF, and there it was again. My forged signature, printed neatly beneath a paragraph I'd never read. I stared at it for so long my vision blurred. Someone had stolen my identity, and my family believed I was the thief. My first thought was to call Claire. Maybe, just maybe, there was an explanation. Maybe she'd seen the same document and could clarify everything. But when I dialed her, she didn't pick up. Not the first time. Not the second. On the third, I got a text, in a meeting. Can we talk later? Later, always later. I sat back in my chair, trembling. Every file I opened screamed one truth louder than the last. I had been set up. Every missing number, every altered document, every subtle deviation pointed to a pattern. Someone who knew me too well, who knew exactly how to mimic my habits, had built this trap piece by piece, and she had watched me walk straight into it. By the time I shut my laptop, my hands had stopped shaking. The hurt was still there, but underneath it was something colder. Clarity. The kind that only comes after your whole world collapses and you finally see who pushed the walls. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about betrayal, and I wasn't going to stay silent. My father's voice sliced through the silence like a blade. Claire, look at me. She didn't. Her eyes darted between the table and her trembling hands, mascara streaking down her cheeks. The room waited. All eyes on the once perfect daughter who'd built her reputation on charm and manipulation. He spoke again, firmer this time. Where's the money? Her voice cracked. I don't know what happened, Dad, I swear. I didn't plan it like that. My father leaned forward, his tone low and dangerous. Then tell me what you did plan. She finally looked up, desperation spilling from her face. It was just supposed to be temporary. You were sick, and I thought I'd handle it better than she could. She glanced at me briefly, as though her words might still wound. You always said she wasn't good with finances. That's not an excuse, my father snapped. You forged her signature. You let me humiliate her in front of everyone. You made me believe she was a thief. Claire's lips quivered. I was under so much pressure. You always expected me to fix everything, to be the responsible one. I lost control. The excuses spilled faster than she could think them up. Stress, confusion, temptation. Each one thinner, more desperate than the last. Then came the real confession, trembling and raw. I was jealous, okay? She cried out, her voice breaking. You were all so proud of her when she got that promotion, when everyone started praising her. You didn't even notice me anymore. I just wanted to prove I could do something big too, that I mattered. The words hung in the air, heavy and pathetic. No one spoke. Even the aunts, who'd always defended her, sat frozen in disbelief. My mother's hand covered her mouth, tears pooling in her eyes. My father simply stared, not with anger now, but something worse, disappointment. Do you have any idea, he said quietly, what you've done to this family? She sobbed harder, shaking her head. I'm sorry, Dad, I'm so sorry. Please, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I sat perfectly still. My tears came too, but silently. Not from pity, from release. From months of carrying guilt that wasn't mine. From being treated like a criminal under my own roof. I let them fall, unhidden, while keeping my voice calm. I kept wondering what I did wrong, I said softly. Why everyone looked at me like I was poison. I didn't realize all along it was you holding the knife. She buried her face in her hands. Please stop. My father's tone broke, rough and quiet. I should have trusted you, he said, turning toward me. I failed you. That single sentence undid me. It was all I'd wanted. Not revenge, not money, just to be seen again as the daughter he once believed in. I nodded, unable to speak. Across the table, Claire's sobs had quieted into hollow gasps. The golden child, the one who could do no wrong, was crumbling in front of everyone, her carefully curated image dissolving with every tear. The silence stretched long, broken only by her uneven breathing. Finally, my father straightened. His voice was firm again, though the tremor beneath it betrayed his pain. You'll return every dollar. And then you'll make things right, not with words, but with actions. Claire nodded weakly, eyes swollen, spirit broken. I watched her, not with vengeance, but with finality. The collapse wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, inevitable, the kind that comes when truth leaves no space to hide. For the first time in years, I felt peace beginning to take root. 3 weeks passed before my father spoke of it again. The house had fallen into a strange quiet. Not peace, not tension, just the uneasy calm that follows a storm too fierce to forget. Claire stayed away, claiming she needed space. None of us argued. The day the lawyer arrived, the sky was gray and heavy with rain. My father sat at his desk, the same one where he used to lecture me about being more responsible. Now, his tone was softer, quieter, tinged with something like regret. I've made some changes, he said, sliding the papers across the polished wood. I can't undo what's been said, but I can make things right. I glanced down, the familiar legal formatting, dense paragraphs of estate clauses and asset divisions. My eyes caught the line where Claire's name had been. It wasn't there anymore, he continued, his voice steady. Everything goes to you now. The house, the accounts, the business shares. Claire forfeited her part when she betrayed this family's trust. I swallowed hard. Dad, I don't need all that, he shook his head. It's not about needing it. It's about earning it. You proved what integrity looks like. There was no pride in his tone, only quiet conviction, the kind that carries years of lessons learned too late. The $200,000 had already been recovered through legal intervention. The bank traced the forged authorization, and after weeks of paperwork and a humiliating confession from Claire, the money was returned. She avoided charges only because I refused to press them. Not for her sake, but for mine. I was tired of carrying bitterness. I watched my father sign the final page, his pen scratching across the document that symbolized not just inheritance, but acknowledgement. He paused before putting the pen down. From now on, he said, you'll handle the family accounts. I trust you more than anyone. For a moment, I just stared at him. It was such a simple statement, but after everything, the doubt, the humiliation, the distance, it felt monumental. I'll do it, I said finally. My voice didn't tremble. Outside, rain began to fall harder, tapping softly against the window. My mother walked in quietly with tea, placing a hand on my shoulder. a small gesture that said everything words couldn't. I looked at the papers again. The ink was still wet. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered all the nights I cried, wondering if truth would ever come to light. Now it had, in ink and law and quiet repentance. There was no triumph in me, no satisfaction in seeing my sister erased from the will. Just relief, closure, the kind that comes when justice is quiet and clean, not loud or vengeful. As I folded the documents and slipped them back into the envelope, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't always mean letting someone back in. Sometimes it simply means you stop letting them control the story. For the first time in months, I felt free, not because I'd won, but because I no longer needed to. It was a Sunday afternoon when I saw her again. The sky was pale and still, the kind of soft light that makes everything look fragile. I wasn't expecting visitors, so when the doorbell rang, I hesitated. Part of me already knew who it was. When I opened the door, Claire stood there, smaller somehow, as if life had folded her inward. Her hair was unkempt, eyes swollen from too many sleepless nights. The confident posture she once carried, that air of effortless superiority, was gone. In its place was something raw and human, remorse. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I nodded and stepped aside. She entered slowly, glancing around as if she wasn't sure she belonged there anymore. The house felt different with her in it, heavier, filled with memories that no longer fit. We sat in the living room, the air between us thick but not angry, just tired. She clasped her hands together, fingers twisting nervously. "I've rehearsed this 1,000 times, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. But every time I try to say it, it sounds wrong. There's no right way to apologize for what I did." I said nothing. She swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "I ruined everything. I lied to Dad. I stole from you. And when you tried to defend yourself, I let everyone believe the worst. I don't even know why anymore. It wasn't about the money. It was about me wanting to feel like I mattered. And in trying to prove that, I became someone I don't even recognize." Her words trembled, heavy with sincerity. For the first time, I believed she wasn't performing. She was stripped of her masks, left only with regret. "I lost everything," she continued. "Dad won't take my calls. Mom won't look at me. I can't sleep without hearing that voicemail in my head. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to say it." I studied her face, searching for the sister I used to know. The one I trusted, laughed with, leaned on. She was buried somewhere under the guilt, but faint traces of her remained. "I don't hate you," I said softly. Her head jerked up, eyes wide. "I thought I would. I thought when the truth came out I'd want to see you suffer. But I don't. I just wanted peace." Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. "Then you're stronger than I am," she whispered. I smiled faintly, not in triumph, but in acceptance. "No, just quieter." We sat like that for a while, two broken halves of what used to be a whole. Eventually she stood, wiping her face. "I don't know how to fix this," she said. "Some things aren't meant to be fixed," I replied. "They're meant to be learned from." She nodded, defeated but somehow lighter, as if hearing that gave her permission to start healing. At the door, she turned one last time. "Do you really forgive me?" I met her eyes and said the only truth I had left. "I forgive you, but I'll never forget what silence taught me." She nodded slowly, tears glimmering in her lashes. Then she walked away, her figure shrinking down the driveway until it disappeared beyond the gate. I closed the door gently. No anger, no vengeance, just peace. The kind that comes when you realize the past doesn't own you anymore. It was supposed to be an ordinary Sunday brunch, one of those rare family gatherings where my dad insisted everyone come together. No excuses. The sunlight spilled across the table, glinting off the silverware. My sister Claire had arranged the flowers herself, all pastel roses and white lilies, as if we were hosting a magazine shoot. Everyone was talking, laughing lightly, and for the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. I remember thinking how nice it was to have a calm morning again, with no arguments, no tension. Then my dad cleared his throat. So, he set down his coffee, his tone casual at first, but his eyes, those sharp accountant eyes, didn't match his voice. "Where's the $200,000, Lily?" For a second I thought he was joking. I even smiled. 200,000? What was he talking about? But the smile slipped from my face when no one laughed. The air around the table seemed to freeze. I could hear the faint tick of the wall clock and the soft hum of the ceiling fan. Every eye turned to me. My fork hovered above my plate, trembling slightly. "What do you mean?" I managed, my voice small, confused. Dad leaned back, crossing his arms. "The money. From the trust account. It was transferred 2 weeks ago. The bank confirmed it came from your authorization." I blinked at him, certain I'd misheard. "What? No, I didn't touch anything." My mother's hand went to her mouth. My aunt looked at me as if I'd confessed to a crime, and then I saw Claire, sitting there in her soft blue dress, hair perfectly curled, her eyes darting toward the tablecloth. She wasn't surprised. She was terrified. But she said nothing. "I don't know what's going on," I whispered. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Dad, I swear I didn't—" "Enough." His voice cracked through the silence. "I trusted you with access to that account. You helped with my paperwork when I was in the hospital. I thought I could rely on you." The heat rose in my chest, spreading fast. Then how do you explain this?" He slid a folded printout across the table. My name was on it, clear as day, right above a line that read "Transfer $200,000. My breath caught. I didn't remember signing anything. Claire shifted in her seat, the chair creaking softly. "Maybe it's a misunderstanding, Dad," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sure Lily wouldn't do something like that. But there was no conviction in her tone. Everyone's gaze stayed locked on me. My uncle whispered something to his wife. My cousin bit her lip. The weight of their judgment pressed down like a physical thing. I could feel my face burning. Humiliation mixing with disbelief. "Dad, I swear I didn't touch that money," I said again, this time firmer, desperate. "I don't even know how to transfer from that account. You know I'm terrible with that stuff." He stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. "I can't do this right now," he muttered. He turned to my mother. "Get the lawyer to double-check the paperwork. I want to know exactly what happened." He didn't even look at me as he walked out. The silence afterward was suffocating. I stared at the half-eaten pancakes on my plate, at the orange juice glass trembling between my fingers. My throat tightened as I swallowed hard, forcing back the tears. Claire finally looked up, meeting my eyes for the briefest moment. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a tight line. There was something in her expression. Guilt, maybe? Fear? I couldn't tell. But she looked away quickly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Don't take it personally," my aunt said softly, breaking the silence. "Your father's under stress. It'll all sort out." But her pitying tone felt like a knife. I mumbled something, an excuse, I think, and stood up. My legs were unsteady as I walked toward the door. I heard whispers behind me, voices too low to make out. I didn't look back. The moment the door shut behind me, the tears came. Not the loud kind, just silent, steady ones that blurred the world. I leaned against my car, gripping the cold metal handle, and tried to breathe. $200,000. My own father thought I'd stolen from him. And my sister. The one person who could have spoken up, who knew how careful I was, just sat there, pale and silent. Something deep inside me cracked that day. Not just because of the accusation, but because of the realization that no one had defended me. Not my father, not my mother, not even Claire. I didn't know it then, but that moment, those few unbearable minutes at the table, was the start of everything that came next. The lies, the discovery, the revenge. It was the moment my world split in two, before the question and after it. 3 months earlier, before everything fell apart, my life felt stable. Dad had just come home from a mild heart attack, and everyone was on edge, trying to make things easier for him. I was juggling work and his paperwork, helping him sort medical bills, insurance claims, and a maze of bank statements that made my head spin. Claire offered to help one afternoon, showing up at my apartment with her perfect hair, a laptop, and that confident smile that always made Dad trust her without question. "You're drowning in this," she said, setting her things down. "Let me handle the boring stuff. You've got enough on your plate." I hesitated. She was good with numbers, and I wasn't. So when she suggested she could organize Dad's accounts and set up online access for easier tracking, I didn't argue. I remember her fingers flying over the keyboard, creating passwords, typing in account numbers, explaining what she was doing, but fast. Too fast. I was trying to follow along, nodding as she said things like, "Don't worry, I'll send you all the login info later." But she never did. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. She was the responsible one, the planner, the golden child. I was the helper, good-hearted but scatterbrained, as Mom liked to put it. Claire had always been the one with color-coded folders and perfect grades. I trusted her like I always had, believing she'd never use that trust against me. Looking back now, I can see the little red flags I ignored, like the day she called and said, "Dad wants me to transfer some of the savings into his medical fund. Can you just confirm the amount?" She made it sound like a routine thing, and I didn't think twice. I said, "Sure, whatever Dad needs," or when she asked me to sign a form she'd already filled out. "It's just to streamline the billing," she said with a laugh. "You know how banks are." I signed it, without reading it. Now, I can still picture that paper, my signature neatly scrawled beneath words I never bothered to understand. My stomach twists when I think about it. How many times had she done that? How many quiet steps had she taken to set me up so cleanly that even I believed the lie for a moment? There were small comments too. Casual, harmless. At least that's how they sounded back then. "Dad really depends on you," she'd say, "but maybe you should let me handle the serious stuff. You're too emotional about money." Or, "If anything ever happened, I'd make sure you're protected." I thought it was sisterly concern. It was control disguised as care. When Dad got better, Claire stayed involved in his finances. She claimed it was to lighten the load, but I noticed she started keeping things from me. If I asked about a payment, she'd shrug, "Handled." If I brought up a document, she'd say, "It's fine, you don't need to worry." And because I didn't want to seem paranoid or ungrateful, I let her. I told myself she was just trying to help. It's strange how hindsight burns like acid when the truth finally clicks. Because sitting at that brunch table, when Dad accused me, all those forgotten moments flashed through my mind in pieces. The signatures, the passwords, the trust I'd handed her without hesitation. I remember her voice, calm and reassuring. "You can trust me. Lily, I'll take care of it." And she did take care of it, just not in the way I ever imagined. The worst part? She played the role of the perfect daughter so convincingly that no one would ever suspect her. She'd built that image for years, selfless, polished, dependable. And me? I was the one who always messed up, who forgot birthdays, who panicked under pressure. Between the two of us, who would they believe? That's the brilliance of Claire's setup. It wasn't just about the money. It was about shaping a story where I was the only believable villain. I didn't see it then, but she was already several moves ahead, and I was walking straight into the trap she'd laid with a smile. It was amazing how normal everything looked that night. The table was set with Mom's good china, candles flickered in the center, and the smell of roasted chicken filled the air. From the outside, we must have looked like any other family, laughing, chatting, sharing a meal. But beneath that polished surface, tension pulsed like an electric wire. I'd been invited last minute. "Family dinner," Mom said, her voice too bright. I almost refused, but something inside me told me to go, to watch, to see. When I walked in, Claire was already there, radiant in her effortless perfection. She wore a new silk blouse and a pair of gold earrings I recognized instantly, the custom emerald set from Orel. The same jewelry she'd bought with the stolen money. My heart gave a hard, painful thud, but my face didn't flinch. "Hey, sis," she greeted, standing to hug me, her perfume, expensive, heavy, wrapped around me like smoke. "You look..." "Rested. Thanks," I said evenly. So do you, she smirked, adjusting the strap of her new designer bag, another luxury brand I could never afford. She made sure to place it on the table, right beside her wine glass, where the logo gleamed under the light. Dad noticed it immediately. That's quite a purse, he said, smiling proudly. You've been doing well for yourself, huh? Claire gave a modest laugh. Oh, just a little reward for hard work. The words burned, but I didn't react. I took my seat quietly, phone in hand, the voice recorder app running silently in my pocket. Throughout dinner, she played the role of the golden daughter perfectly, sharing stories about her new client, her promotion, her financial growth. Every phrase was carefully designed to contrast with my supposed downfall. And Dad, blind as ever, lapped it up. You could learn a thing or two from your sister, he said at one point, not unkindly, but with that familiar tone of disappointment. She's really made something of herself, I smiled faintly. Oh, I'm sure I will, Dad. Claire glanced at me then, her expression flickering for just a second. Maybe she sensed something in my tone, the calm, the certainty. Because beneath all her arrogance, she'd always known I wasn't stupid. I watched her sip her wine, her diamond bracelet catching the light. The same bracelet from the Orel purchase receipt. It took everything in me not to call her out right there, to slam the papers on the table and scream, "You did this." But I didn't. I needed her comfortable, unaware. So instead, I leaned back and asked, Claire, didn't you say you were cutting back on luxury stuff this year? You told me you were saving for a condo. She froze for the briefest second before recovering. Oh, that, she said with a dismissive laugh. I changed my mind. I figured I deserved to enjoy life a little, you know? Dad chuckled approvingly. That's the spirit. You can't take it with you. I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. The irony was too perfect. Him praising her for enjoying my stolen money. Mom passed the potatoes, her eyes darting between us, sensing something she couldn't quite name. There was a tension in her shoulders, a subtle worry, but she said nothing. As the night went on, I noticed Claire getting looser with her words. The more Dad praised her, the bolder she became, dropping hints about her recent investments, her financial savvy. Each word was another rope tightening around her neck, and I made sure every syllable was recorded. When dessert was served, she leaned back smugly and said, You know, Dad, I think everything happens for a reason. Maybe this whole money confusion with Lily was a sign, a reminder to be careful who you trust. Dad nodded thoughtfully, his eyes soft with misplaced wisdom. I just smiled, taking a slow sip of water to keep from grinning outright. Because while she was busy performing for admiration, I was collecting her confession. Every condescending word, every self-satisfied laugh, every innocent jab, captured perfectly in high-quality audio. By the time dinner ended, I was calm. Peaceful, even. As I helped Mom clear the plates, I caught my reflection in the window, my face steady, composed, unrecognizable from the woman who once cried herself to sleep. Claire thought she'd already won. But the next move was mine, and I intended to make it unforgettable. It happened late one night, when I couldn't sleep. My mind was looping the dinner like a broken record. My father's praise, my sister's smug smile, that cursed handbag gleaming under the chandelier. I was scrolling through old messages, desperate to distract myself, when I stumbled across something odd, a voicemail, unheard. It was from months ago, around the time my father first fell ill, when the family finances had been chaos. I must have missed it in the storm of hospital visits and late-night worry. The timestamp read March 17th, 9:43 a.m. I almost deleted it without thinking, assuming it was another spam call or bank reminder. But something, instinct maybe, made my thumb hesitate. I pressed play. The voice that filled the room was friendly, professional, and devastating. Hello, this is Stephen from Broadwell Bank. I just wanted to confirm that Ms. Claire Thompson has relayed your authorization for the $200,000 transfer to your joint family account. Thanks for confirming earlier, and we'll process it today. Have a great morning. My stomach dropped. The air around me seemed to vanish. Ms. Claire Thompson. He said her name so casually, so confidently, like this was all routine. My name wasn't mentioned again, only that my sister had relayed my authorization. My pulse started racing. I replayed it, then again. Every word burned deeper. I could even hear faint typing in the background, the click of his keyboard as he spoke. Real, unedited, indisputable. She'd spoken to him. She'd impersonated my consent. I sat frozen for nearly a minute, phone still in my hand, my heart pounding so violently I thought I'd drop it. My fingers shook as I saved the message into a new folder, labeling it simply, proof. That word looked almost wholly on my screen. Proof. The one thing I'd been missing. For months I'd been living in the shadow of a lie so skillfully spun that even my own father believed it. I'd questioned my sanity, my memory, even my worth. But now, for the first time, I had something solid, a voice that couldn't be twisted or denied. The more I listened, the more details surfaced. The way he said, "Thanks for confirming earlier," that meant there had been 2 calls, one before, one after. Claire must have called pretending to be me, and when they needed voice confirmation, she followed up as herself, claiming she'd spoken to her sister, a perfect con, if I hadn't kept the message. My throat tightened as anger replaced shock. I remembered her fake sympathy when Dad first accused me, how she'd touched my hand, whispering, "I'm sure it's just a mistake." I remembered her comforting me when I cried, pretending to share my confusion, all while she knew exactly what she'd done. I sat there in the dark, trembling with a kind of clarity I'd never felt before. The shame that had followed me for weeks began to peel away, layer by layer, replaced by something far more dangerous: quiet resolve. I transferred the voicemail to a backup drive, then emailed it to myself, twice. I wasn't taking chances. When I looked up, dawn was creeping through the blinds, pale, cold, and silent. The house was still asleep, unaware that everything had just changed. Claire thought she'd buried the evidence months ago, but she hadn't counted on my insomnia. By the end of that week, I could feel the shift in how everyone looked at me, like I was something rotten sitting quietly at the center of the table. No one said it directly, but I could feel it in their glances, in the way phone calls cut short when I joined the conversation, in the polite silence that followed my arrival. Claire had done her work well. She'd started small, I later learned. "I'm worried about Lily," she'd told Aunt Grace. "She's been impulsive lately. Dad trusted her with a lot of responsibility." Then, apparently, she'd sighed, the way only a perfect daughter can sigh, and added, "You know how she is with money. It spread faster than wildfire." By the next weekend, my cousin Julia asked, a little too casually, "Everything okay with you and Uncle George?" I heard there were some financial issues. The phrase made me want to scream. I started avoiding family calls altogether, because every conversation felt like an interrogation disguised as concern. Even Mom's tone had changed, softer but distant. "We're all worried about you," she said once, as if I were a teenager who'd maxed out her credit cards instead of a woman accused of stealing $200,000. Meanwhile, Claire played her role flawlessly. She texted me daily, tiny doses of fake kindness. "Dad will come around. I'm trying to calm him down. You just need to explain better." Each message was a needle, pricking deeper into the wound she'd created. I cried often in those days, though I made sure no one ever saw. The tears weren't just from pain, they were from the helplessness of being unheard. It's one thing to be hated for something you did. It's another to be hated for something you didn't. But even in that pit of humiliation, something in me shifted. I stopped reacting, stopped explaining, stopped defending myself. Because what good were words in a family that had already chosen its villain? Instead, I started listening, watching. The first time I recorded Claire, it wasn't even planned. She'd dropped by unannounced, carrying homemade soup and fake sympathy. "I told Dad you wouldn't do something like that," she said sweetly, settling into the armchair like a benevolent savior. But you have to admit, you've always been a little careless with details. Maybe you signed something without realizing it. Something about her tone, that mixture of concern and accusation, made my skin crawl. So, I set my phone face down on the coffee table and hit record. She talked for nearly an hour, weaving half-truths into a tapestry of lies. You know, she said at one point, people are saying you might have a spending issue. You always liked nice things. I mean, no judgment. It's just who you are. That last sentence stayed with me long after she left. It's just who you are. I replayed the recording that night, my stomach turning. Her voice was calm, almost soothing, but every word was a dagger meant to twist deeper. Still, I listened again, and again. Each time I caught another tell. The slight hesitation before she mentioned money. The fake sigh when she said my name. I realized then that the only way to fight her was not with outrage, but with patience. Claire thrived on reactions. The more emotional I became, the more unstable she could make me look. So I did the opposite. I became quiet, careful, calculated. When she texted, I replied politely. When she visited, I smiled and offered tea. When she hinted at my financial confusion, I simply nodded. All the while, my phone was always recording. I saved screenshots, forwarded emails to a secure folder, printed receipts she thought I'd forgotten. Every fake laugh I gave her became another layer of armor. Every silence another thread in my net. One evening, I caught my reflection in the darkened window and barely recognized myself. My eyes looked older, sharper, not the naive girl who handed her sister her passwords 3 months ago. This new version of me was colder, steadier. I whispered to my reflection, "You wanted a villain, Claire? Fine, let's play." Because now, for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't the one trapped in her web. I was weaving my own. The morning it all clicked began like any other. Another day of pretending not to notice the sideways glances. Another day of forcing composure. I'd been scrolling through old financial documents again, hoping for something, anything that didn't make sense. Most numbers blurred together, endless lists of deposits and withdrawals. But then, one line stopped me cold. Luxury jewelers. $18,740. It was dated just a few days after the supposed transfer. My heart thudded painfully. I didn't buy jewelry. I hadn't so much as stepped into a mall in months. I clicked the transaction details, and the description listed the store's name. Aurel Boutique. Aurel. The same boutique Claire couldn't stop bragging about last month. She'd posted pictures of herself on Instagram, posing in their signature black and gold shopping bag, captioned Self-Care Day. You can't pour from an empty cup. I remembered rolling my eyes at the time, thinking she was just showing off again. Now the coincidence hit like a slap. I felt my pulse rising as I printed the statement and tucked it into my purse. The more I looked at that number, the more I saw her smirking face at brunch, her too perfect concern, her trembling shock. I didn't text her. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I drove straight to the boutique. The shop was nestled in the city's upscale district. Marble floors, champagne lighting, that air of quiet superiority that made me feel instantly out of place. A woman behind the counter looked up with a professional smile. "Welcome to Aurel," she said. I took a breath. "Hi. I think there's been a mistake on my account. I need to confirm a recent purchase made under my name, about 3 weeks ago." Her smile faltered slightly, but she nodded. "Do you have an order number?" I handed her the printed statement, trying to sound calm. "Just the date and the amount. It should be in your system." She typed something, her nails clicking softly against the keys. "Yes, I see a purchase for that amount. A custom emerald necklace and matching earrings. Gorgeous pieces. Would you like to see the design file?" My voice caught. "Yes." She turned the screen toward me. The name at the top read, L. Parker, my name. But beneath it, in the pickup confirmation field, was another, Claire Parker. She picked it up? I asked quietly. The woman nodded. "Yes, lovely lady. Said she was collecting on your behalf. Even showed us a message from your email confirming permission." My breath left me in a sharp exhale. I gripped the counter to steady myself, Do you still have that message? She hesitated, glancing around. We usually archive customer confirmations for record keeping. I could pull it up if it's important. It's very important, I said, my voice trembling despite my effort to stay composed. She nodded and disappeared into the back office. I stood there, staring at the display case. Rows of glittering stones under perfect lighting. All I could think was how easily my sister had taken everything, my trust, my name, even my digital identity, and turned it into luxury and lies. When the manager returned, she handed me a printed copy. Here you are. The message came from this address, she said, pointing to it. It wasn't my email. It was the fake one, the one with the missing letter. Would you mind signing something confirming that? I asked softly. It's for a legal review. Her eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. Of course. I understand. She signed it without hesitation. I thanked her, left the store, and sat in my car, gripping the paper like a lifeline. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. From adrenaline. From rage. The puzzle pieces were finally aligning. Not just the fake email, not just the transfer, but now a tangible link. The stolen money funding Claire's sparkling little shopping spree. I looked at her latest Instagram post one more time. Her smiling face, captioned, "Hard work pays off." I whispered to myself, "You're right, Claire. It does, just not for you this time." When I told my father I wanted to host a small family meeting, he hesitated. His voice carried the same stiffness it had for weeks, that quiet disappointment that cuts deeper than anger. If it's about the money again, he warned, I don't think that's a good idea. I swallowed hard. It's about the truth, I said. He paused, sighed, and after a moment agreed. Fine, but don't make a scene, all right? Those words echoed in my mind the entire morning. Don't make a scene, as if I hadn't already been cast as the villain in one. I spent hours arranging the dining room. The same space where I'd once celebrated birthdays and Christmas dinners now felt like a courtroom. Every chair a seat for judgment, every glance a verdict. The heavy mahogany table gleamed under the chandelier. My mother placed fresh flowers in the vase, trying to create a sense of calm that didn't exist. By 6 o'clock, the room was filled. My father at the head, his arms folded tight, my mother beside him, expression guarded. A couple of relatives had been invited for fairness, as Dad said. 2 aunts and 1 uncle who had always sided with Claire on everything. And then there was Claire herself. She walked in like she owned the air around her, heels clicking, lips curved into a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. She'd even dressed the part, a cream silk blouse, gold earrings, and that same designer handbag sitting proudly on her arm. The very one she'd bought with my money. Wow, this feels serious, she said lightly, sliding into a chair. What's all this about? I met her gaze and forced a calm smile. You'll find out soon. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. My father shifted impatiently. All right, he said, let's get this over with. What is it you want to say, honey? I reached into my bag and placed my phone gently on the table. I want everyone to hear something. Claire raised an eyebrow. Oh, are we doing recordings now? She asked, half laughing, half mocking. I ignored her and pressed play. The room filled with the sound of a man's voice, steady, professional, unmistakable. Hello, this is Stephen from Broadwell Bank. I just wanted to confirm that Ms. Claire Thompson has relayed your authorization for the $200,000 transfer. The rest didn't need to be said. My father's expression changed instantly, disbelief first, then dawning horror. My mother's hand went to her mouth. One of my aunts gasped softly, and Claire froze. For the first time, her mask slipped. A faint tremor crossed her jaw. She reached for her water glass, but her fingers missed it. That's not what it sounds like, she stammered. He's mistaken. I leaned forward, my voice steady. He said your full name twice. The silence was deafening. The recording ended with a soft click, and for a few seconds, no one breathed. Finally, my father spoke. His voice was low, broken. Claire, tell me that's not you. She opened her mouth. No words came out. Just a soft, choking sound that ended in silence. I sat back, heart pounding but steady. For the first time since this nightmare began, the room wasn't against me. Eyes that once burned with suspicion now turned toward her. The golden child, the trusted daughter. I didn't need to shout. The evidence had spoken louder than I ever could. When my father stood up, I saw something in his face that chilled me. Disappointment so deep, it bordered on grief. And as Claire stared down at the phone still glowing between us, I realized the trial had already begun. The moment I pressed play, time seemed to stop. The soft hum of the ceiling fan, the faint ticking of the clock, even the creak of the old wooden chairs, everything vanished beneath that one. Damning voice echoing from my phone. "Hello? This is Stephen from Broadwell Bank. I just wanted to confirm that Ms. Claire Thompson has relayed your authorization for the $200,000 transfer. We've completed the transaction as per your approval. Thank you again for your trust." Click. The message ended, but its echo lingered like smoke. The silence that followed was unbearable. Thick, suffocating, heavy with realization. I could hear my own heartbeat. My father's eyes were fixed on the phone, unblinking, as though he could somehow erase what he'd just heard. My mother's lips trembled, her hand frozen mid-air above her teacup. One aunt let out a faint gasp before quickly covering her mouth. And Claire? Her expression shattered. At first she tried to hold her composure, a forced smile that twitched at the edges. Her voice cracked. "That doesn't prove anything. It's just, he must have mixed up the names or something." I didn't say a word. I just replayed the message. Again. The second time it sounded even clearer. "Ms. Claire Thompson, your authorization." Her voice rose, desperate now. "Dad, you know how banks are. They mess things up all the time. He must have just—" My father stood abruptly, the chair legs scraping against the marble floor. "Enough!" His voice thundered through the room, cutting her words in half. "You told me she took that money. You stood in this house crying, swearing you saw the transfers yourself." Claire flinched, her face drained of color. Dad, please, I didn't." He slammed his hand on the table. The sound reverberated like a gavel. "You lied to me. You let me shame your sister for your crime?" The tears came then, crocodile at first, practiced, pitiful. "Dad, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just—" She looked around frantically, searching for sympathy, but found none. Every pair of eyes in that room was cold, unforgiving. I wanted to feel triumph, but all I felt was exhaustion. The kind that seeps into your bones after months of carrying someone else's lie. My father turned toward me then, his voice softer, almost breaking. "You knew?" I nodded slowly. "Not at first. But I found out. I just wanted you to hear it from someone other than me." He rubbed his face, suddenly older, defeated. "God, what have we become?" Claire sobbed harder now, covering her face, her shoulders shaking. But even her crying felt hollow, like a performance that had run too long. One of my aunts finally spoke, voice sharp with disgust. "All this time, you made us believe she stole from her own father. We pitied you, Claire. Do you understand what you've done?" Claire didn't answer. She couldn't. My mother finally stood, her chair scraping back. She walked over to me, eyes glassy, and touched my hand, the smallest, quietest apology. My father's jaw clenched. "You're going to fix this," he said to Claire. "You're going to return every cent and explain to everyone what you did." Claire's shoulders slumped, defeated. "Dad, please." But the plea fell flat. For a long moment no one spoke. The air was heavy with betrayal, not just mine, but everyone's. Then I reached over, stopped the recording, and slid the phone across the table. "Now everyone knows the truth," I said softly. "That's all I ever wanted." No one moved. The truth hung there, heavy and final, like a verdict. And in that silence, my sister's empire of lies finally crumbled, piece by piece, word by word. In the weeks that followed, life didn't rush to return to normal. It unfolded slowly, like a wound choosing how to heal. The house was quieter, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not the suffocating silence of guilt or suspicion, but a calm one, the kind that comes when everything false has finally fallen away. I spent mornings on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the old oak tree in our yard. It used to remind me of how stuck everything felt, the deep roots, the immovable trunk. But now I saw something else, endurance. Even after every storm, it still stood. I guess, in my own way, I had too. I used to believe revenge meant proving everyone wrong, shouting the truth until they finally heard it. But what I learned was quieter, and somehow far more powerful. The truth doesn't need to scream. It waits, it lingers, and when the time is right, it speaks for itself, louder than any voice raised in anger ever could. For months, I'd carried pain like armor, sharp and heavy, meant to protect me. But armor, I realized, also keeps warmth out. Letting it go didn't make me weak. It made me free. I didn't need to destroy anyone to reclaim my dignity. I just needed to stop fighting battles that were already won. Sometimes, silence is the victory. When people from my extended family started calling again, pretending they'd always believed me, I didn't correct them or remind them of their doubt. I simply listened, smiled, and let the awkward pauses hang between us. Let them feel what silence can do. It's amazing how truth fills a room even when you say nothing at all. My father began to heal too. The guilt in his eyes softened over time. He'd often ask, "Do you think she'll ever change?" And I'd just say, "Maybe. But that's her story now, not ours." That answer seemed to comfort him. I went back to work, to normal routines, grocery runs, late-night reading, phone calls with friends who'd stood by me. Yet something in me had shifted permanently. I no longer needed validation to know my worth. The people who once doubted me no longer had that power. One evening, as the sky bled into shades of gold and violet, I stood outside, the wind brushing against my skin. I thought about everything: the betrayal, the humiliation, the sleepless nights. And then, I thought about what I'd gained: strength, clarity, and the quiet certainty that no one could take my peace again. Pain had carved out space for something new: perspective. I could finally look back without flinching. I could think of my sister without bitterness. She was a chapter I'd closed, but one that taught me everything I needed to know about trust, forgiveness, and myself. I turned toward the light, the last rays of sun spilling across the porch, and smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally at peace with what wasn't. Sometimes justice doesn't come as thunder or applause. Sometimes it arrives softly, wrapped in silence, in the moment you realize you don't need revenge to feel whole. That's what silence taught me.